Welcome to Cheat House. Join us for relatable cheating stories that will make you laugh, cry, and nod your head in recognition. Arv and Mira had been together for 3 years. They were the kind of couple everyone envied, always laughing, finishing each other's sentences, and dreaming of a future together. Their love felt unbreakable, like a bond forged in fire. But sometimes, even the strongest bonds can crack. It started innocently enough. Arv had been working long hours at his new job, and Mira found herself spending more time alone. Her close friend Riyah suggested she join a local book club to pass the time. There, Mira met Karen, a charming and witty man who shared her love for poetry. Karen had a way of making Mira feel seen in a way she hadn't in months. Arv's late nights and distracted conversations had created a void, and Karen filled it effortlessly. It began with stolen glances and long conversations about their favorite authors, but soon the boundaries blurred. One rainy evening, after a particularly engaging discussion, Karen offered to walk Mira home. As they reached her doorstep, their goodbye lingered too long, and before Mira could think, Karen leaned in. For a moment, she hesitated, but then her heart betrayed her. The kiss was brief, but it was enough. The guilt weighed heavily on Mira. She avoided Arv, pretending to be busy or tired. Arv, though preoccupied with work, noticed a shift. She was distant, her laughter forced. One evening, Arv surprised Mira by coming home early, hoping to rekindle their connection. But as he walked into the apartment, he saw her phone buzzing on the table. The message preview showed Karen's name and a line that read, "I can't stop thinking about you." Arv's world shattered. He confronted Mira, his voice trembling with hurt and anger. Mira confessed everything, tears streaming down her face. She apologized, but the damage was done. Arv, though heartbroken, couldn't see a way forward. "I gave you my everything," he said, his voice breaking. "But trust, once it's gone, it's gone." The next day, Mira came home to find Arv's things packed. He left a note behind, thanking her for the memories but making it clear he couldn't stay. As the days turned into weeks, Mira often thought about Arv and the love they'd shared. She knew she had made a mistake, one that cost her the person she loved most. Arv, meanwhile, focused on healing, promising himself never to settle for anything less than a love that was mutual and true. Some bonds, once broken, can never be mended. Mira struggled to adjust to her new reality. Her once lively apartment now felt empty, echoing with memories of Arv. She replayed their last conversation in her mind, the pain in his voice haunting her. Despite her regret, she knew reaching out to him would only make things worse. She tried to find solace in her daily routines, but everything reminded her of Arv, his favorite coffee mug, the books they'd read together, even the playlist they had created for road trips. Karen, sensing Mira's guilt and sadness, tried to comfort her, but it wasn't the same. The spark that once felt so intoxicating now seemed shallow compared to the deep connection she had shared with Arv. Meanwhile, Arv threw himself into work and leaned on his friends for support. They encouraged him to move on, and though he appreciated their efforts, the pain lingered. Nights were the hardest. The silence reminded him of Mira's laughter, and the way her head fit perfectly on his shoulder. One evening, Arv decided to take a step toward healing. He deleted old photos and packed away items that reminded him of Mira. In the process, he stumbled upon a journal she had gifted him on their first anniversary. Flipping through its pages, he found a handwritten note she had written. "Arv, you're my home. No matter where life takes us, you'll always have a piece of my heart." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. For a moment, he considered reaching out to her, but he reminded himself of the betrayal. Love, as strong as it once was, couldn't survive without trust. Months passed, and both Mira and Arv began to rebuild their lives separately. Mira quit the book club, unable to face Karen or the memories tied to their affair. She focused on her career and took up new hobbies, hoping to rediscover herself. Arv, on the other hand, started traveling, exploring places he and Mira had once dreamed of visiting together. Their paths eventually crossed again at a mutual friend's wedding. Mira saw Arv from across the room, laughing with a group of friends. He looked happy, lighter, freer. She hesitated, debating whether to approach him. Summoning her courage, she walked over. "Hi, Arv," she said softly. Arv turned, his smile fading for a brief moment before he nodded politely. "Mira, it's been a while." They exchanged pleasantries, the conversation strained and formal. Mira wanted to apologize again, to tell him how much she still thought about him, but the words wouldn't come. Arv, sensing her discomfort, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Mira. We both made choices, and we've both grown from them. I hope you're doing well." His words, though kind, carried a finality that Mira couldn't ignore. She realized then that while Arv had forgiven her, he had also moved on. It was time she did the same. As Arv walked away, Mira watched him go, feeling a mix of sadness and acceptance. Their story had ended, but it had taught her a valuable lesson about love, trust, and the consequences of her actions. Some endings, she realized, aren't about loss, they're about growth. As the wedding festivities unfolded, Mira found herself sitting alone at a table, lost in thought. Seeing Arv again had stirred emotions she thought she'd buried. Her heart ached, but there was also a sense of closure in his words. Across the room, Arv seemed to be thriving. He chatted animatedly with a woman Mira didn't recognize, someone with a warm smile and an easy laugh. The sight stung, but Mira reminded herself that she had no right to feel jealous. Arv deserved happiness, and it was clear he was finding it. Later that evening, Mira stepped outside for some fresh air. The night was cool, the stars scattered across the sky. She hugged her arms to herself, feeling both the weight of the past and the possibilities of the future. "You okay?" a familiar voice asked. She turned to see Ria, her old friend who had introduced her to the book club. They hadn't spoken much since the fallout, but Ria's expression was soft, free of judgment. "I'm getting there," Mira admitted with a small smile. Ria nodded. "You've been through a lot, but you're stronger than you think." They talked for a while, catching up on life. Ria encouraged Mira to focus on the things that made her happy, urging her to embrace the second chance life had given her. In the weeks following the wedding, Mira took Ria's advice to heart. She started volunteering at a local shelter, channeling her energy into helping others. She also joined a hiking group, discovering a love for the outdoors she never knew she had. Slowly, she began to find herself again. Arv, meanwhile, continued to explore life with an open heart. The woman from the wedding, Priya, turned out to be a friend's cousin who shared his passion for travel. They started seeing each other casually, and though it was too early to call it love, Arv felt hopeful. One day, while packing for another trip, Arv found the journal Mira had given him. This time, he didn't feel the sharp sting of heartbreak. Instead, he felt gratitude for the lessons their relationship had taught him. He decided to leave the journal behind, a symbolic step toward letting go of the past. As months turned into years, Arv and Mira occasionally heard about each other through mutual friends. Mira had moved to a new city, thriving in a career she was passionate about. Arv had settled into a fulfilling life, finding joy in both his work and his relationships. One day, by chance, Mira stumbled upon a handwritten note she'd once tucked into an old book. It read, "Sometimes, life gives us a second chance, not to fix the past, but to create a better future." Smiling, she folded the note and placed it on her desk. It was time to fully embrace that future. Though their paths had diverged, Arv and Mira both knew they were exactly where they were meant to be. And in their separate journeys, they carried with them the bittersweet wisdom of a love that had taught them to grow years later. Life had completely transformed for both Arv and Mira. Their paths rarely crossed, but when they did, it was through stories shared by mutual friends or fleeting memories triggered by a familiar scent or a particular song. Arv had found stability and joy in his relationship with Priya. What began as casual companionship grew into a deep and meaningful connection. Priya had a warmth that balanced Arv's quieter nature, and together, they built a life filled with adventure and mutual respect. They traveled extensively, ticking off destinations from Arv's bucket list and creating new dreams together. Mira, too, had blossomed in her own way. Her move to a new city had been a turning point. She joined a writing group, finally pursuing her passion for storytelling. Her work at the shelter inspired her first collection of short stories, which earned critical acclaim and opened doors she never imagined. One evening, while attending a literary festival in her new city, Mira was invited to speak on a panel about resilience and reinvention. The audience was captivated as she shared her journey, how she had lost herself, made mistakes, and found the strength to start anew. Unbeknownst to Mira, Arv had also arrived in the city that week for a business meeting. As he strolled past the festival venue, he noticed Mira's name on a poster promoting the panel discussion. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to listen in. Sitting at the back of the packed auditorium, Arv watched as Mira spoke with grace and vulnerability. She looked different, more confident, more self-assured, but there was a familiar spark in her eyes. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, and for a moment, Arv felt a pang of pride. After the panel ended, Arv lingered outside, debating whether to approach her. Just as he decided to leave, Mira stepped out, locking eyes with him almost immediately. "Arv," she said, surprise and warmth mingling in her voice. "Hey, Mira," he replied with a small smile. "You were incredible up there." "Thank you," she said, her cheeks flushing. "I didn't know you were here. Just passing through," he explained. "I saw your name and thought I'd stop by." They walked to a nearby cafe, catching up on everything that had happened since the last time they spoke. There was no bitterness, no awkwardness, just two people reflecting on how far they'd come. As the evening wore on, they laughed about old memories and shared new dreams. Arv told her about Priya, and Mira couldn't hide her happiness for him. In turn, she spoke about her writing journey, her new life, and how she'd finally learned to embrace her flaws and strengths. As they parted ways, Mira turned to Arv and said, "I'm glad we ran into each other. It's nice to know we both found what we were looking for." Arv nodded, his smile genuine. "Me too. Take care, Mira." Walking away, both felt a sense of peace they hadn't realized they needed. Their chapter together had long since ended, but it had shaped the people they had become. Sometimes, closure doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from realizing you've grown beyond it. Months after their chance encounter at the literary festival, life continued its steady march forward. Arv and Mira didn't keep in touch, but their brief meeting left a lasting impression on both of them, a quiet reminder of how far they had come and how much they had grown. Arv and Priya's relationship deepened with time. On a crisp autumn day, Arv proposed to her during a hike to a secluded mountain viewpoint, their favorite spot. Priya, overwhelmed with joy, said yes, and their engagement became a celebration of love, trust, and new beginnings. The wedding was a small but beautiful affair, filled with laughter and heartfelt vows. Arv felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude as he looked into Priya's eyes. She had shown him what it meant to love and be loved without reservations. Mira, on the other hand, was thriving in her literary career. Her second book, a novel inspired by themes of redemption and personal growth, became a bestseller. Critics praised her ability to write with raw honesty and emotional depth. During a book signing event in her hometown, Mira encountered an old face, Riya. They hadn't seen each other since the wedding years ago, but their reunion was warm and filled with nostalgia. "I always knew you'd do something amazing," Riya said, holding up a signed copy of Mira's book. "You've come such a long way." "So have you," Mira replied, learning that Riya had started a successful counseling practice. Their conversation turned to old times, and for the first time, Mira shared the full story of her journey, including her regrets and lessons learned. Rial listened with understanding, and by the end of their talk, Mira felt a sense of catharsis. One evening, as Mira sat in her cozy apartment, typing away on her next project, she received a message from an unexpected number. It was Arif, sending a photo of him and Priya on their honeymoon with a simple caption. "Found my happy ending. Hope you found yours too." Mira smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected. She replied, "Congratulations, Arif. You deserve every bit of happiness. I've found mine too, in my own way." As she set her phone down, Mira looked around her home. It was filled with books, art, and mementos from her travels, an authentic reflection of the person she had become. She realized that happiness wasn't about finding someone to complete her. It was about becoming whole on her own. Arif and Mira's story had ended long ago, but in its wake, two lives were rebuilt. Stronger, wiser, and full of hope years later, Arif and Mira's lives had settled into their respective rhythms. Arif and Priya had two children, a boy named Kian and a girl named Arya, who brought endless joy and chaos into their home. Arif's weekends were now filled with family hikes, bedtime stories, and impromptu dance parties in the living room. Priya, ever the adventurous spirit, encouraged their family to embrace spontaneity, leading to trips to remote villages and unplanned picnics. Arif often reflected on how much he'd grown since the days he thought his life had unraveled. His heart felt full, his home filled with love and laughter. Mira, meanwhile, had achieved a quiet kind of success. Her writing career flourished, and she was now a celebrated author. Her books resonated with readers worldwide, and she often received letters from people who found comfort and strength in her stories. Though she was content, Mira occasionally wondered about Arif, not out of longing but curiosity. She hoped he was as happy as she was. One summer, fate brought them together again. Mira was invited to give a keynote speech at a conference on personal growth and storytelling. Arif, now an entrepreneur running a travel business, was one of the event's sponsors. Neither knew the other would be there. As Mira stood on stage, sharing her journey with the audience, Arif watched from the back of the room, a mix of pride and admiration in his eyes. After her speech, the crowd gave a standing ovation, and Mira stepped off the stage to mingle with the attendees. She spotted Arif almost immediately. His face had matured, but his warm smile was unmistakable. "Arif," she said, surprised yet pleased. "Mira," he replied, extending a hand before pulling her into a friendly hug. "You were incredible up there." They sat down for coffee after the session, catching up on the years that had passed since their last meeting. Arif shared stories about Priya and their children, his eyes lighting up with every mention of them. Mira talked about her books and the lessons she'd learned through her journey of self-discovery. As they spoke, there was no trace of the pain or awkwardness that once clouded their interactions. They were simply two old friends, connected by a shared past but firmly rooted in the present. Before parting ways, Arif said, "I'm really happy for you, Mira. You've built an incredible life for yourself." "And you," Mira replied, her smile genuine. "You found your happiness, too. It suits you." They exchanged numbers, not with the intention of constant communication, but as a gesture of mutual respect. They knew their paths were different, but they appreciated the moments when those paths crossed. As Mira watched Arif walk away, she felt a deep sense of peace. Life had a way of taking unexpected turns, but it also had a way of bringing closure when it was needed most. Arif returned to his family, where Priya and the kids greeted him with excitement, eager to hear about his day. Mira went back to her writing, channeling her renewed sense of purpose into her next novel. Their journeys had been separate but intertwined, each shaping the other in profound ways. And in the end, they both knew that some stories don't need to end with a reunion to be meaningful. Sometimes, the best endings are the ones that leave you stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever comes next.